to our second artist talk as part of the exhibition Mnemosyne Memory as a Voice for Nature. My name is Liz Faust. I'm the director of the exhibitions, and we're joined by three wonderful artists from the collective. Just a little bit about the show in case you haven't seen it yet. Mnemosyne Memory as a Voice for Nature is an international exhibition and research-based artist collective, the Mnemosyne Initiative, that reconsiders how visual memory operates as a critical tool for understanding land use, environmental transformation, and ecological justice. All right, now how we're going to start is we're going to go around, starting with David, who's going to introduce himself and the piece in the show, and then we'll go on to Alina and Perla.
Okay, my name's David Goldberg, a London-based installation artist. Looking at concepts of neoliberalism and what else have I been looking at? And the history of the British Empire, basically through the concept of post-autonomy. So I can show you. If you go to my website, can I do that? Yeah. No, I need to go somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you go to my website, postautonomy.co.uk, and you can see my biography and list of exhibitions and subject matter, etc. So those issues have been funneled into this particular exhibition. Okay, so so the first set of concerns was through the analysis of Michael Heiser, the linking up ideas of contemporary Western mainstream art to the use of land, particularly within the context of North America. That led to two things. How do we understand the role of contemporary art today, or in mainstream art, and the relationship to land, however that's defined, and more specifically the idea of indigenous people and their land. And for this exhibition, I was very interested in installation that starts its physical presence and concepts through the issue of handing land back to indigenous people. So the project is entitled Conditions of Use, and I'll explain that in a minute. Plus constructing an idea of the physical properties to present these issues. Okay, so the installation is in 3 acts. Land back, which I've just discussed, and looking at how to break down and remake the body of art. So the installation is structured like that. So you have the top area where presenting a raised floor. So I'm showing the materials of the floor, the basic existing materials of the venue, the gallery. So I'm showing those materials as a living entity, not as a space in this situation, but the floor as a thing, as an entity with living creatures and what microsystem within that area. So on top, layered on top of that are the examples of land. And the third part of that is the space the work occupies within the exhibition space. So they're the basic 3 acts. So the the work came out of the work came out of contextual analysis of the area, specifically within the context of Baltimore as the first British colony in North America, and the relationship of Goucher College to the main administrative center of the colony of Baltimore. So I was interested in that history of the British colony, the relationship between the British and the indigenous people, then the formation of the colonies and colonialism. Then I was interested in the history of the indigenous people, and I went right back to the idea of the principles which allowed the British and the West, or the Europeans, to undertake this exploration and whatever it is, starting with the doctrine of discovery and doctrine of occupation. That then led to understanding. I had this huge body of research, so I had to ask myself some really hard-nosed questions, and those questions is, how do you use this material within mainstream Western art? And does art do what we think it's doing? Is it able to accommodate this research and these ideas? We are under the assumption that it can, but maybe it isn't. And the other, so that's a key point. Another key point is, how do we present contextualist concepts, history, what have you, within mainstream Western art? Does that promote those issues? Does it affirm those issues, or is something else happening? So they're the two principal structures of my thinking. But the baseline is what shapes what we're doing today. So there's this doctrine of discovery, doctrine of occupation. They are the principal doctrines shaping what we do as people and as artists. So they're the basic issues I'm looking at. I can explore that and go into further details a bit later on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. And we'll definitely come back to a lot of the points that you raised. All right, next we have Alina.
Yeah. Hi. I am a Romanian artist, and for the last 10 years, my practice was socially engaged. I work around generating a participatory art process, and the works presented in the exhibition are based on the case study of my project. Started in Romania, in the mountains where I come from. I come from a very small mountain resort that used to be very well known abroad internationally for its therapeutic values. But after the Romanian Revolution, it lost its glory, and it became privatized, and all the facilities went into the hands of people who didn't have the expertise or the resources to run it accordingly. So this town started to suffer because of massive migration, and most of the buildings by now became abandoned or run down. So in 2017, I started a project there with the intention of contributing to the revival of the area through arts and culture. We organized artist residencies, bringing artists from all around the world, music festivals, educational programs, all around ecological topics, hoping that we can connect the young people of the area to the realities of the global world and raise awareness about the need to mitigate the effects of climate change. So we generated a permanent collection for the town, for the heritage of the town. We refurbished one of the abandoned buildings in town, which is a power plant, and the video work I have, it's showing a moment that somehow closed the circle, because we function as a cultural center in this building for 5 years, and then we lost it due to gentrification. And the work presented in the show illustrates a moment when art dies, basically. And I started to consider, because we went through years of programs and in community engagement, very vibrant, very prolific years, and then it came a time when we had to close down, and we realized how temporary the contemporary actions are. And so I'm now working on framing this experience and understanding how an art-based methodology could be framed to benefit other communities and work in other contexts, regardless the geographical or cultural boundaries. So my work is basically facilitating situations and looking into ways of collectively finding solutions for new ways of existing through creativity and the arts. Memory plays a really important role in this process, because based on it, I feel like it facilitates a platform for continuation and for hope. The building that we converted into a cultural center had on the facade the artwork of one of the most well-known abroad Romanian artists, Dan Perzhovsky. And his works are presented in the most important museums around the world, from MoMA to Tate to, he was part of the Documenta last year, drawing the facade of the main museum. And I had to wash down this work myself in December 2024. And that was a huge loss for the heritage of the area, and the fact that nobody supported the conservation of this work, and the whole contribution of his was vanished, was a very brutal moment for the process, and it raised the question of how arts can actually support in a real way, rather than just asking questions, how it can actively contribute to finding solutions to support the development of territories and the generation of cultural heritage. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Alina. And last but not least, we have Perla.
Hello, you all. So I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I live in Mexico City and I work from here. I live and work in my studio home. And I work a lot in communities in Mexico, outside of Mexico City mainly. A lot in Oaxaca, which is an important place for me. I'm very interested in place and materials. To me, speak about the memory of the site and the history and all what is behind. And so Oaxaca has become for a very long time to me such a place where a very complex history happens. It's a state in the south of the country that was very colonialized. I say very because it's a bit different what happened in the north and in the south of the country. So when Spanish conquerors were here 300 years, Oaxaca, Chiapas, and the south was very, very affected. But also there was some kind of a strange difference in Mexico because mestizaje happened, and that means that it blended. Spanish and locals blended in a way, but there's still many things happening in those areas that I'm very interested. So what I tend to do is go to the craftsmen, work in their workshops, work with them, collaborate many times, do pieces of work that relate to their place. For example, I'm now working on a piece that hopefully will become the floors or the pavements for their cemetery. Cemeteries here are very important. They're the Day of the Dead in November. So I'm trying to find a way for all of them to collaborate together, paving the stones and making a better place for them to be able to use it. Anyway, so I tend to work with the land in a different way. I use the materials of the land, earth from different areas of Oaxaca. I travel and I go different tiny towns or larger. Last November and December, I was in a place, had a residency, fortunately, at Casa Wabi, where I could work with a local community of young students, and we together paved part of their school. So in a way, they're just smaller interventions on site, right? That I'm very, very interested. But on the other hand, I bring all these materials to my studio. And then what happens is that what you can see in the exhibition now. And eventually we can share the screen. And so I do lots of small or larger pieces that relate to the place. So in this case, I would use red earth and make staircases, which are important to me. They are like transformation. They speak about transformation, the ladders and the staircases. So these are made with local clay from the coast of Oaxaca. Also the orange earthy painterly object on the left is stucco, as they did in the walls, on the walls of the churches and of all the constructions, very important constructions. So I'm learning how to make it, how to use it, and instead of making a painting, I am using the stucco as a way to speak about the place and about the history of the place. Then I have photographs of some black, pinkish cochineal interventions on a site also in Oaxaca. All of this was made in Oaxaca. So there's this site-specific installation I did, collaborating with a younger artist, local artist from Oaxaca, that he works cochineal, that is still very important, but was that material with which to dye all the important robes and textiles from everywhere in the world that was exported from Mexico as a really very, very important material. But what is in the back of what happened with cochineal is just very strong and powerful too. So I also have there in this cabinet, for me it's like a cabinet of curiosities in a way, what I did for the show. So there are flowers and imprints in black ceramic, which is from another little town nearby Oaxaca City. It's called San Bartolo Coyotepec, where I'm going to go tomorrow, in fact, again, to work with them in their workshop, work with their clay. By the way, this clay is not possible to take it anywhere. You can just use it in that little town. They are the ones that fire it. They are the owners of their Zapotec history, memory, materials. They won't let it fade in a way. If one wants to work with them, it's okay. They would allow me to go and work in their workshop and they will help me fire it. So what I'm trying to do is continue and follow their traditions and find a way to keep them alive again and again and again in every single way I can. So what you're seeing here is, for example, those black ceramic objects I make, also photography of the land. This red is real earth from the place, but with my photography. Then there are imprints of plants as well that we can see in the little. Then there's a stone that is covered with gold leaf. Oaxaca was also and is still. It was very well. The Spanish that went there were the Dominicans, and that those priests were very Baroque, and they used a lot of gold leaf. So that's why I covered with gold leaf that stone from Oaxaca place. It's a greenish stone, and there are quite extraordinary churches and sites that are just extraordinary. In fact, every single time I go to Oaxaca, I cannot stop going into this huge, amazing church that is just all golden, gold leaf. I wished I would have a photo of it. It's just quite extraordinary. And there you see the mixture of Spanish and local, indigenous local people that were just completely working together side by side. And still, when one was there, I must say that there's still a little bit of resistance, because normally the Spanish, although they would be awful at times and then not that awful at times, and it was just a very complex history, they still feel that one needs to be very careful there. One cannot just go and do whatever you want. You really need to respect them and go with what they think is best for their place. So in any case, it's always like a really important way to remember that we go there and we just need to be very, very absolutely respectful. So what else can I say? I think that's enough.
Thank you, Perla, and thank you, everyone, for the brief introductions. For the next question, all three of you operate and kind of work within space and a specific place. Can you each talk about how you came to work with the places that are represented in the show? Alina, I know you gave a little bit of a hint of how you ended up in that town, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, my process, although it's not purely personal, but it has a autoethnographic sense to it, because I left this town when I was 14 years old, and in my childhood I was deeply connected to nature. I can say the forest was my playground, and many years later, traveling the world, I was actually in India when I suddenly realized how valuable the resources in my hometown are. Because when you live there, it's so remote. All young people just want to move to the big city and work for big companies or corporations. And in a way, that was my case as well. Although I studied art and architecture, I left, and I never imagined I'm going to go back to live there. But 20 years later, from India, understanding the value of this very pure air, because we also have salt mines and resinous forests, and the air is highly ozonated, and combined with gut healing mineral waters coming through the layers of earth in hundreds of years. I understood that actually I was very lucky to be born there. Certainly Romania, it's not an easy country. And coming from these places in the northeast of Romania, which sadly was left behind. It's a territory that was left behind because there was no geopolitical interest in developing this area. There was no highways crossing nearby. So it's probably the side of Romania less developed. But then I realized, I mean, in a global context, I realized how precious this place is. So that's how I went back. But also, like, 1 year in an interview I was given to a magazine in Bucharest, they asked me what my parents are, and I said my mother was a biology teacher, and my father was an art teacher. So subconsciously I created an art project about nature. I don't know, I mean, I guess it's all interconnected, but that's how it started. And I have gained this experience over almost 10 years of grassroots work. But now I feel like the specific and the challenges of this territory are quite, they have some sort of a universal value, in a sense that I have learned that most of the emerging countries or less developed territories around the world, they face similar challenges. And so when it comes to culture and the arts, getting into action to work with these communities to support their sustainable development, it now feels like the kind of experience we generated there could actually be applied on many other territories, regardless the boundaries, the specific, the geographic or cultural specific. So yeah, this is the work that you're showing now. It's I called it fragmentary evidence. and it's actually the Instagram page of this project that I have personally curated for the last 8 years. Of course, it's collaborative work because there were a lot of photographers, and there's content generated by a whole community of creatives. But I curated the post myself, and I feel like there are. I mean, Instagram gives us it becomes an archiving place because I had a lot of content in external drives, and I unfortunately some of them were lost. And I look back, and the Instagram page it's actually the most coherent, chronologically curated evidence of what happened in this town since 2017 till today. And if you look at the work, there are some white bars from time to time separating images. So there are rows that mark the regularity of posting over the years. So in the beginning, when I was like full energy and totally committed to the project, I would almost post every day. But after 8 years of work, when my energy started to lower, and unfortunately I felt like I didn't receive enough. I didn't receive much institutional support, or haven't focused on the educational side. We didn't represent much electoral value for the town, or any financial gain for the community. I started to get very tired, and so the post decreased, the intensity of the post decreased. So it's very interesting if you look into details, but there are some highlights for every year. So there are like hundreds, if not thousands, of people who participated in the project, and the only way that we can show it now in a quite a complete form is this Instagram page that remained. So who knows what will happen in the future with all this content that we upload online, and it remains as an archive. But yeah, I feel like there is always a personal connection to the projects we choose to develop, whether we are aware of it or not.
Thank you. And then I'm curious about David.
Okay. So a big part of my project is contextual analysis. Okay. So yeah. So this image shows the internal structure of the what I call it's an installation, but I always see it as a dense object. So one of the first decisions I made about the work when I thought about planning the work for the exhibition was having one structure or object to structure all the information I was looking at. Okay. So during the contextual research, I was looking at vast amounts of information in a similar way to Alina, but I had to make different types of choices. Okay, so the choice of the context, the choice of the spaces and areas was decided through the analysis of Baltimore as part of the British imperial history, which I was very unfamiliar with. So there were two stages with that. So I was looking at the origins of the British Empire, setting up with Baltimore, Maryland, then the painful exchanges between the British or Europeans and the indigenous people. So so there is two things: how to analyze that history of British Empire, the construction of the colonies and colonialism. And the second thing was how to embody that within this structure. And I think I refer to the problems I was looking at before. One of the issues with looking at any information, any history and concepts, is the thing that's in the background or center stage, i.e. the artwork. What is that artwork? Majority of people seem to think that the artwork is a neutral entity, or the history is a neutral entity which aren't required to be analyzed or doesn't play any role in understanding the content or information that's being presented. Well, obviously it's completely integrated. So if you're looking at issues of colonialism or neoliberalism, as it were, or in this case, the history of the encounters between the Europeans or the British and indigenous people and their culture and their way of life, and the erasure of that life and history and the memory of those people and the memory of what happened to those people within British history, because these historical facts have been erased. So we're looking at the issue of memory and the effect of memory on what we're doing as artists within particular historical contexts. We have a problem when memories of particular historical events have been erased. And the logical outcome of that is these issues tap into and confirm post-war mainstream historical narratives, which we're living every day, meaning that the memories and these historical events are purposely erased for the mainstream narratives to take place. And as artists, unless we analyze those issues and get to grips with them, the practices we're developing promote this narrative, and that is one huge big problem. But when you start looking at these things of place, memory, you then come up with even further problems, because you can't get to grips with these issues unless you get to grips with understanding the body itself of the object of art. That body or the object of art is a carrier of mainstream culture, and it's the container of whatever policies that are being enacted in the world at this point in time. So how do you disrupt that? How do you start to question in any meaningful way the content and program of art and the content and program of socio-political narratives that are embodied within mainstream culture and embodied in that work of art? So these images here, I think, give a clue to what I was looking at. So this image here, especially the one at the right with the red interior, this was a SketchUp image that gave me a clue into analysing these issues. And that was through the idea of mining into the body of art. And that opened up a whole new territory, which I've been trying to grips with in the embodiment and construction of the installation. So as I said before, the system two or three main components: the surface area, and beneath that is developing a sort of mining into and rebuilding the body of art. And so rebuilding and breaking down, remaking the body of art provide opportunity of then asking yourselves what other aspects, what else can art embody? So how to think about that. So what is thinking? How do we think? What is a critique? To be able to analyze the installation, and where do we start to look at rebuilding the body of art? So I came up with two historical moments. One is at the point of the origin of exhibition art, particularly here in England in the 19th century, where particularly Ruskin explicitly talks about the role of mainstream art and politics and how these issues congeal within the exhibition. So that's one starting point. The other starting point was looking at the political context we're living in at the moment. We're at the finalization, as it were, of neoliberalism with new political forces. Okay, so I've gone back to the starting point of neoliberalism in the 1970s through looking at Paolo Pasolini's work, and particularly Salo and Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom. So if you look at Marxist theory, they are looking at the composition of this context through Pasolini's Salo and de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom, because today we are physically enacting what is taking place in those supposedly works of fiction, i.e. the notion of human beings and nature reduced to objects, and the relationship of art to absolute power. Anyway, so the point of that is Pasolini asks the fundamental question: what do we do with in these moments of extreme danger and catastrophe? Okay, so So his idea is that art needs to do something else. It needs to pose questions which majority of people or artists are not daring to ask about the socio-political context we're living in, which are threatening what we do as artists and cultural producers. Anyway, that's my response. Sorry. Slightly meandering.
You had some definitely some great t-shirt worthy quotes in that, and definitely very poignant and timely, especially in not just the United States, but the rest of the world as well. And
yeah,
then
that's what I mean. It's I could have gone on to say how what I'm looking at provides a template with what is happening elsewhere. Yeah.
perfect. Yes, no, that is fantastic. And then Perla, you might have mentioned it, but I might have missed it. How did you come to working with the material in Oaxaca?
I always traveled through the country, but Oaxaca seemed to be a place where, as I mentioned, local. Well, first there's a very important. There's Zapotec, Mixtec. There's archaeological extraordinary places to visit, but not as a tourist, but it's really very powerful, full of symbolism, full of really creative people there. The people are really, truly creative and work with their materials all the time themselves. So every time I went, and I started going from 1995 onwards, so that's been a long, it's a bit almost like not only an interest of me, it's kind of a love for the place. People there know that I'm not from there, but I wished I would be from there. So they know me and they know that I go to the little towns, and I'm really fond of the local. So I went there because somehow, personally, I wanted to make work that would relate to our roots, to roots from Mexico. And there I find it in a very, very profound way. In every single town, the way they speak, they have such a strong and powerful culture. So I just want to be not only part of it, but just to how to enhance. They work with textiles, ceramics, there's archaeology, stone, there's just every single, and there has been very important artists that have developed, like Tamayo, Toledo. Toledo was just an extraordinary artist that made and developed more the crafts, not pushed, but developed in a very impressive way. Photography, craftsmanship in every single way. So in a way, it's like an impressive hub. So in a way, I just want to continue with that tradition in a way.
Excellent. Now, what's interesting about the three of you is you're both looking specifically at place, but in different ways. David, you're getting both David and Perla is using soil samples, but in different way. David is focused on the archive and information. Perla, you're looking directly at the materiality, but Alina, your video in the show shows you erasing that kind of archive and history. So I'd love for the three of you to kind of discuss together kind of what those different apparatuses and methods of working with archive and material kind of come together in these pieces?
Mm-hmm. How to start?
Yeah, I could say that in my process, I realized that art interventions create some sort of temporary an autonomous zone, like an independent buffer for something else to continue, to be taken over based on that. So even though we can erase, because I don't I can't imagine how contemporary art will remain in history. Most of the examples we have so far are just and they proved their temporary nature more than previous art movements or styles, or but what we do now, since art became more political, like more obviously politically engaged and social tool, or environmental method, we just, like, I had to make peace with the fact that I generated the context for something else to be born from there and continue. So in such a moment when the art market reached its highest point in the commodification of the arts, erasing this artwork, which technically has huge value even financially, and because nobody understood in this area, there was no one to stop me. But the same artist in an art fair in Bucharest sold like a tiny piece with 30,000 euros. So in that context, what I deleted, what I erased there, had a huge financial value, but it was only a value if there was someone to understand that. So it was a very complex and I must say fairly painful process. But yeah, we have to make peace, because this is in the end given the realities of our times and the polycrisis we're crossing and living, this is probably one of the smallest problems that we're facing. So I could really take it very personal, but I'm trying not to, because I understand the dimension of the emergencies we're living through. So yeah, for me, that is it.
I would like to say that at some point I feel that I'm working within the community, very involved inside the community. So it feels strange, because there is lots of politics also around and all over, and Mexico, and well, in the world, no doubt, and in Mexico, there's so many issues that we are facing politically too. But somehow it's very strange and almost difficult to accept for me. But I find myself, when I'm there, in a strange position of being a little bit part of them, and a little bit in a bubble. So it's different in a way. Yes, it is very different. And I find myself sometimes asking a lot to myself, what is it that I should be doing? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing something else? How should I address what I'm doing? Is it helping in any single way? Is it worth? all the time, all the time. And then I go back to these places and I just get like lost with them, with this materiality and their love for it as well, and I get involved. So it's a very strange and complex combination, like saying, should I be doing something else that is more powerful, more deep, and criticizing all what's going on, and on the other hand, I just go with the flow with them. And I help in a very, I'm not sure if it's really help, it's just collaborate really to make evident things that are happening there, but that they love as well. So it's a really different, somehow different reality in that place for me, for good or for bad.
Excellent. And then David?
Okay, so looking at archive or collected information I've developed on the history of the British Empire in Baltimore and Maryland, and the huge amount of information I've accumulated on the history of the indigenous peoples of North America. It raises very, very difficult issues. When you're looking at the indigenous people, you're looking at historical documentation of the severe loss of life and land by these people and their culture, and the erasure of these people and their history from mainstream history. So there's quite there is an issue or question that has to be asked. I mean, in what way am I using that information about these people, and what position am I taking? Because this is quite fundamental. Because when I was trying to develop an installation around this information material, rather, it occurred to me that, and I was building it design a rather beautiful installation with this material. I realized that I was just making a beautiful design installation on the destruction of this culture, these people. However, whatever I was trying to get to grips with that, it seemed as though, in terms of presenting that material as an installation, I get away from that perspective. So I decided that I needed to use that material in a completely different way. So within the exhibition or the installation, I presented that information as a document, which you can only access through a QR scan or code. Okay, so I've shifted that history away from the center, but I presented that history in a completely different way, because it seemed to me that all that particular history is about the history of the defeat of those people. So it's a form of psychological warfare. That is my understanding of that material, and I didn't want to be part of that. So and the same with the history and documentation of the British Empire. I don't believe any of that. Well, I don't have any choice but to recognize and register that history is the way it's presented in that documentation. But I don't believe that narrative or history for one reason or another. So a key part of my key decision of the installation was to shift the particularly when it comes to the giving the land back. I made a mental decision to make it appear as though that land has been given back to these people. Okay, that may sound a bit simplistic, but it's like shifting the mind into a different location. Yeah, so that's Pasolini. Okay, yeah. So the whole installation is about shifting the mind into a different psychological state, where it's no longer about defeat or about accepting the situation we're in, but using art in a different way as a form of provoking or stimulating thinking. So the whole process is like a continuous thinking process, or process of remaking the body of art. So the whole thing is shifting us into a different position, temporal, psychological position. I didn't see that. That's quite nice. So
Excellent.
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's shit. And the other thing is the bird box as well. That is part of this process. So the whole point was to figure out different structures. What other structures can we have from the existing structure that art is currently shaped by? So the bird box is like a different type of exhibition space, but I also mentally see it as this part of spaces government. So it's a place for different entities and species and life forms, as it were. And again, it's about shifting things to a different place. So different. So how do you create different worlds? So how do you rupture mainstream narratives, mainstream culture, and open that up to different possibilities?
Excellent.
So I went off a bit. Sorry about that.
It's all right. You made some great, fantastic points. So now, as we come to the hour, we do have Artemis in the chat asking some questions. So I am going to put them on screen. So her first question is, how does your artistic intervention extracting clay/soils from differs from the current land use of the place you explore? Does the colonial past still informs the current land use in a different way now? I think this is for Perla and David.
Well, I think the way I use clay and soil, and I try to use it in a similar way that they would be using it, like being very respectful. Like, I'm going to go to this little town. I wrote, I called, I said, can I come to work with you in your workshop? Would you be able to help me? Can we do this collaboration? Or I work with the other craftsman that is working with the cochineal in a very profound way he works. So in a way, I'm trying to adapt to their way of working with their materials. in the most respectful way, but it's a very complex process, I would say, because the other thing that I must accept, I'm not really a local, and I'm very white, and I have my surname Krause, and then we're addressing other big issues that do happen here in Mexico and elsewhere. And I'm a woman. My parents were born in Poland. They migrated to Mexico. And so when all this story happens and they ask me, why do you come here? Why do you do? I say, I feel Mexican, although I have some blood from Europe, of course. And my parents were born there, but I feel Mexican and I love the land and the place here. So it's a very delicate subject. It is very delicate. And I know they see me more now than ever because Mexico has become very gentrified. Mexico City, Oaxaca too, and people don't like it, and I understand. So it's a very delicate balance, and that's why I want to be very honor what they do a lot, but also try to be part of it. But on the other hand, I am not, and it's a delicate balance, very.
Okay.
What was the other question? I don't know if I answered. Artemis, does the colonial past still inform the current land use in a different way now? Yes, it's very present, the colonial past there in Oaxaca. It's absolutely there, no doubt. And they also try to work with it in different ways. I don't know if everybody questions it deeply, but they do. All the young generation is very, very prone to ask, why are we doing what we do? Me, them, everybody. Why are we using those materials? Why are we still using the kilns in the way they used them many years ago? So there's a lot of questioning being asked now there, especially now more than ever, which is excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so I try to address that in my last answer, but obviously that has to be uppermost in our minds, obviously. So how the samples of soil arrived on the platform is rather an awkward question, but in my mind that the key issue is that the relation is acting out the return of stolen land. So it's that to indigenous people. So it's that the act itself I'm really interested in. So not how that happens, because within the allotment scheme that shapes land in North America, the return of the land is impossible. Because it means indigenous people are having to become capitalists, they have to become citizens of North America. So if you use that scheme, then the land is not going to be returned. It's always going to be part of the colonial scheme. So you have to figure out a different strategy. So in my simplistic mind, I imagined that land being returned. Okay, it's being returned to indigenous people. So that's a psychological moment. That was a key issue. But another part of the installation was this idea of asking people to look at how they value the land. Okay, so we could either have look at that question in terms of monetary value as capitalists or neoliberal citizens, or look at it in a different way. And I read this book by an indigenous woman looking at the issue of water, and she was looking at indigenous thinking, okay, as a way of breaking from Western rationalism or Western capitalist rationalist thinking through the idea of improvising how a selection process takes place when it takes a walk through the landscape. So look at pulling out different types of materials. So I was thinking that the way you join or put together different materials as a way of swapping materials for land, as it were, develops a different value system. So that was another process of trying to break down the colonial mentality. So they're the two solutions I can think of at the moment.
Excellent.
Not very well explained, but that's
No, I think you made some great points, though, David. Definitely a lot of great quotes to pull from that. Alrighty, everybody. We are hitting our time. Any final comments as we close? Alrighty. So thank you, guys. The exhibition Mnemosyne Memories, a Voice of Nature is up until April 2nd in the Silver Gallery on Goucher campus. Please feel free to stop by. I will point out that this week is spring break coming up, so it's by appointment only for the next week, but otherwise come in during our normal gallery hours afterwards. All right. Thank you so much. And you guys, thank you again, and have a great day.
So much.
Thank you.
Very, very
Bye,
interesting.
everyone.